Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
Now, Ross Kaminsky.
Come on, man.
On Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
Some of you may have seen, oh gosh, it's more than 15 years ago now, but a Pulitzer Prize winning photograph of a bunch of Marines and Navy corpsmen, although it's hard to tell the difference because they're all wearing similar uniforms, kneeling on the ground around the body of a Marine who had passed away at the Battle of Fallujah. It's a photograph that, as I said, won a 2005 Pulitzer Prize. That picture involved, in a most important way, my next guest. Dr. Donnelly Wilkes, who retired from the U.S. Navy at the rank of lieutenant commander, U.S. Navy doctor, like both of my parents were, and stationed briefly before his first deployment at Camp Pendleton in northern San Diego County in California, where I lived as a kid on base and then for a while off base while both of my parents were stationed there. Dr. Donnelly Wilkes, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
I don't want to jump too far ahead in the story yet and maybe have you tell, I'm not going to have you tell us yet about that picture. We'll get to that, but there are a couple other things I want to talk with you about first. Where were you on 9/11 and what did that mean to you?
I was in my fourth year of medical school at Tulane University in New Orleans. I was rounding on patients in the morning and coming across a breezeway through some doors into the hospital. I saw a group of people around a TV, and of course it caught my eye. I stopped, saw the headlines that the Twin Towers had come down, and at that moment I didn't know how, but I knew my Navy service would be changed forever, and in short order it was.
And how did you know you were going to be serving in the Navy?
At that time, I was on a 4-year Navy scholarship, so the Navy had committed to paying for medical school for me, and in turn, I owed them 7 years of active duty service. And, in peacetime, it was probably going to be on a ship or perhaps a duty station overseas, and with 9/11, that changed everything.
Yeah, it sure did. So your first stop after you left the U.S. on your way to deployment in Iraq was Okinawa, and I'm curious about the training there and some of the additional prep work that they did to get you ready for what the scene would be like in Iraq.
Yeah, the battalion, about 1,000 men, we flew to Okinawa, and we were on Camp Hansen, one of a few Marine Corps installations still there on the island. And the mission there was to train for the type of urban combat that we would encounter in Iraq, since it had been a while since the Marines had gone in an urban combat environment like that. So we trained intensely on that island for those 3 months. I took care of the men with common injuries and things like that as we prepared to go to Iraq.
And I should have mentioned this to begin with rather than just assuming it because it's so ingrained in me, but just explain to the listeners who don't know, like I said, you're a Navy doctor and you're talking about Marines. Why Navy doctor with Marines?
Yeah, the Navy and the Navy Medical Section, specifically Navy Medical Corps, takes care of active duty Marines. The Marines are kind of a division of the Navy, and they don't have their own medical corps, so that's where the Navy comes in. And like you said, when we're deployed, when we're in the field, we all look the same, including the Navy corpsmen.
Right. And we don't call them corpsmen on this show. I really appreciated your story of how you felt and reacted after the first attack against the unit against your unit, even though the mortars didn't land that close and there were no injuries. And one sentence from your book, I doubt if I can ever describe my new feelings of loneliness, hatred, and fear. Can you just take a moment and maybe talk briefly about each of those, loneliness, hatred, and fear?
Yeah, they all go together, and on a deployment, especially in a combat environment, you go through these peaks and valleys of emotions, every person in their own way, and you're learning how to deal with them, how to how to assimilate into this new life where you're kind of living at a 10 out of 10 intensity. And, for me, it was just the third night, I believe. We had arrived at our forward base just outside of Fallujah, and the mortars start dropping. And if you've never experienced that, nothing can prepare you for what that feels like. To know that there's someone out there, in our case, often in the dark, that you can't see, lobbing these weapons at you. And even if they don't make a direct hit, the ferocity of the blast and the concussion is... it's not lost, and it does its damage mentally. And you go through a few of those, and you learn that you're in a new environment that you have to figure out how to survive in, and that's emotionally and physically. So the loneliness is not, it's not something that takes seed much, because you've got your brothers around you, and you're on that mission together. But there's times when you're out there, and especially when we were pushed forward into the Cloverleaf, which was near Fallujah, when you're far from home, and you're far from even consultation for me, even as a physician, from another doctor that can help me, and that loneliness is something that you just have to learn how to rely on your skills to get you through it. Let's put it that way.
And I should have mentioned this to begin with, but I'm just so enthusiastic about the conversation that I didn't mention. Dr. Donnelly Wilkes' new book is called Code Red Fallujah, a doctor's memoir at war, just recently published. And congratulations on writing and successfully getting a book published. That's no easy thing to do. And folks, you're going to hear some of Donnelly's story today, but I want to encourage you to go buy Code Red Fallujah and read in a lot more detail, not just detail about battles, but they're just remarkable insights, the way you tell the stories about what was going on in your brain, and who you turn to, whether people, faith, and other things to get through it. It's really well done.
Thank you for that.
You mentioned the Cloverleaf. What and where is it, and what could you see from it?
The Cloverleaf is the name for a tactical position right outside Fallujah, really just a few hundred yards from the border of the city. And it was tactically important during the Battle of Fallujah because it had direct access into the heart of the city. And so the Marines took over that position. It was basically a highway overpass, and they called it the Cloverleaf because from above, the freeway on-ramps and off-ramps made the leaves of a clover, and that's what it looked like. So we were positioned there. That's where we established our field medical aid station. We set up litter stands, stretchers, medical equipment for field trauma. The injured Marines in Fallujah would be evacuated to us, usually by ground Humvee, to our position there, and that's where we would provide treatment. It's also where a lot of assets for the battle would come in and out: tanks, amphibious assault vehicles, Apache attack helicopters coming overhead. There is just constant action in and out of the Cloverleaf.
This might be a good point to talk about that famous photograph that you note that you didn't even know it was taken until you saw it published. But tell us what's going on in that photograph.
Yeah, that photograph, it was taken by an AP, Associated Press photographer, Murad Cesar. I believe I'm saying that right. Anyways, he had just been dropped off there. As I said, a lot of different people were coming in and out of that position, and happened to be there. That is a lieutenant who had died in the battle. He was brought to us with severe wounds, severe head injury. And despite our best efforts, he died. And we were surrounding him, working on him, when right around the time that photo was taken. Right after he died, we just kind of instinctively put our arms around each other, and I led a prayer for him, just praying for strength and healing, and as brothers in Christ, allowing us to gather the courage to go on in the fight. And that's what we did. We prayed together, and then we finished the prayer and went right back to work, and received more casualties. That photo was snapped by the photographer as we prayed, and unbeknownst to me, it appeared in some newspapers and magazines, I think that week. And my mom saw it, my family saw it before I even knew it was available. And I received some emails asking what the heck's going on.
Wow, it's remarkable. Absolutely
Yeah,
remarkable.
really potent.
When you were preparing, when you were training at Pendleton, at Okinawa, they're obviously doing their best to prepare you for what you're going to see and what you're going to have to do. When you were serving then with the Marines in the Battle of Fallujah, what did you think that you were maybe to yourself surprisingly well prepared for, and what did you feel like maybe you were surprisingly unprepared for?
Yeah, good question. You know, I give the Navy a lot of credit for sending me through the training that I needed to prepare me for combat medicine. And I'll tell you, you know, as an internship graduate, in other words, I had 1 year of formal training outside of medical school. You're still kind of a baby doctor, but in the military, unlike civilian residencies, they take you out of your regular training and they send you out to field training. And so I spent time with the Marines on Pendleton, you know, going on mock nighttime raids in attack mode on pretend targets, so to speak, with moulage blast wounds. In other words, you know, patients who had fake injuries that we put on a helicopter and medevac. I went out to Texas and did a combat casualty care course, spending 3-4 days out in the field, again, fake wars, so to speak, with blast sounds and fake injuries that you would treat like the real thing. I went to hospitals and spent time with the trauma team. So I felt prepared in that way, but I was plucked out of my residency, which unlike civilian residencies, you have to complete at least 3 years before you can practice autonomously. So I was prepared, yet still a fairly junior doctor. What I was unprepared for, and I don't know that there's any training that can fully prepare you for it, is just the level of trauma that we did see, and operating in a combat environment, providing field medical care with you know, a battle going on in the background. Sometimes bullets not flying over my head, but you can hear them. But incoming mortars and rockets right at our position at the Cloverleaf. And in the book, you know, there's a couple instances where rockets almost had a direct hit, would not, you know, knocked us off our feet a couple times. The heat, the dust, the extreme environment was really, there's nothing that could prepare you for that, because you can't simulate Iraq in Okinawa or in the States. So the extremity of the environment was difficult to prepare for in a combat environment.
My special guest, Dr. Donnelly Wilkes, served as a U.S. Navy doctor with Marines in the Battle of Fallujah in 2004. He also had another combat tour in 2008, was awarded the Navy Commendation Medal for Valor. Just a remarkable story. His new book is called Code Red Fallujah, and that's actually the website, too, if you want to order the book, learn more about Donnelly, coderedfallujah.com. I want to get a couple more questions in with you, Doc. Talk to us about talking to Marines about and treating them for psychological issues.
Yeah, great question. You know, I think we're doing a better job of that than we ever have. The military has, you know, recognized how important it is to address it, to allow the men to talk about it and be able to bring it up when they need to. So, you know, certainly as we were preparing for war in Okinawa, you know, you put 1,000 men in training on an island, and, you know, there's a lot of downtime, sometimes some boredom, and, you know, things start surfacing. So, you know, I talked a little bit about how some pre-combat stress, you know, came my way. And once in a while, you know, a platoon commander would have to send a Marine to me to have an evaluation if they were, you know, acting out or maybe signs of depression or things like that. So I'd counsel them. And then in the battle, you know, there's a few times where some Marines were evacuated to me for combat stress. You know, one particular Marine I was talking to him when he was brought to me at the Cloverleaf. He had been in the battle in Fallujah, and platoon commander was giving him orders to drive his Humvee towards the line of fire, and he just froze. He couldn't do it despite orders. So, of course, you know, good platoon commander plucks that Marine out and gets him back to me. Or in his case, we sent him one level up one level of care up the chain in a safe environment when he could go to a combat stress tent, we called it. And they had professionals there that could give him rest, water, counseling, assess his state of mind, and get him back into the fight if it was warranted, or have some time off. And the more that's been recognized over the years, I think it not only strengthens the fighting force, but it removes that stigma that you're not a warrior if you have those problems. It's helping to remove that so men can talk about it and get better quicker.
Right. So just two quick thoughts on that. Number one, hopefully, even though it's still just an enormous and horrendous problem, hopefully that kind of work reduces veteran suicide, I hope. I think it has to. It's still a big problem, though. And also, what a difference from, if you ever watched a war movie like Patton, right? Like Patton would have just slapped that guy and sent him back in, and that guy would have, either gotten killed or killed himself later. I'm so glad that there is this new, better approach.
Absolutely, you're right. There is more assets out there, and you're also correct. It's still a huge, issue, and so the medical communities, veteran communities, especially, are still making great efforts to continue that effort to let our warriors know that there's help available for PTSD, combat stress, depression, anxiety, etc. And there's a lot more that's available to our military members today than there ever has been in the past.
Two more questions for you, Doctor. Just switching gears very much. Tell us about your second wedding.
Second wedding, yeah. So in the book, you'll read that my wife and I were or it was my fiance at the time, the deployment's coming up, and there's just a lot on our plate. And I decided, I'm not going to go off to the Middle East without this girl secure, so to speak. So we had a quick conversation, and we hopped in the car to Vegas a few days before I left, and we eloped. And we didn't tell anybody. In fact, I called my pastor on the way to Vegas, Tim Thompson, and I said, "Hey, we want to do this. Can you help us keep a secret?" Because he had to marry us when we returned. He said, "Doc, go get married. Don't tell a soul." So we got married and didn't tell anybody. We came home, after my deployment, had a wonderful wedding. To everybody else, that was our real wedding. And then here in the book, we kind of dropped the bomb on our friends and family. It's been a lot of fun getting the text messages, because you can tell who's reading the book and who's delayed.
You can tell I'm reading the book. All right. And I'd like to end our conversation today with anything that you want to say about or to your fellow current and former members of the United States military. Here in Colorado, there are a lot of current and former military, not so much Navy, mostly Army and Air Force, but a lot. But anything you want to say to or about them as we head into Memorial Day?
Yeah, Colorado, one of my friends, Phil Treglia, he was a company commander in my Marine Corps battalion. Anyway, he lives there. So shout out to Phil Treglia. I want to say to all my fellow Marines and Navy corpsmen that you're the fabric of the red, white, and blue. I truly believe it. And despite going through, something I honestly never thought I would have to endure, even though I signed up for it, I found myself in an environment that was just challenging every fabric of my soul, and you guys helped me get through it. And the thing I love about the military and just service in general is that you come from different backgrounds, places, sizes, shapes, and colors. And when you're out there in the field, deployed, or in a combat environment especially, all that goes out the window. None of it matters. You're just there for the same mission, and you feel that. And to me, there's nothing more that brings and breeds human bonding than that service. And for that reason, I think everybody should serve if I had it my way. It doesn't have to be in the military. It could be Red Cross, U.S. Postal Service. But some service just helps you understand what it means to give of yourself and be an American. And so to the men and women in the United States military, you embody that service, and I love it, and I love you for it, and I'll never forget it.
Dr. Donnelly Wilkes, United States Navy Medical Corps, his new book, Code Red Fallujah, A Doctor's Memoir at War. Thanks for your service. Thanks for your time today. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for what you do.
Wow. All right. Let's take a moment and ponder that. We'll be right back on the Ross Kaminsky Show.
This is Denver's Talk Station with Ross
Thank you.
Kaminsky.
That was great.
Dan Kaplis today at 4. 6:30.
Great questions, Ross. Appreciate it.
Denver.
Does it stream again? Like I can put it out on my social media, or is it kind of live and done?